Every day, something pulls at you. A message, a comment, a tone of voice, a look of disrespect. And before you even realize it, you've reacted. Your mood shifts, your focus breaks, your power leaks away. This is how most people live, reacting instead of ruling. They think they're responding to life, but in truth, life is controlling them. Stoicism teaches a different path. Not emotional suppression, not fake calm, but mastery. Because the moment you react without thinking, you hand your authority to whatever provoked you. And a man who cannot control his reactions will never fully control his life. Today, we're going to break that cycle. You'll learn 6 Stoic principles that help you stop reacting on impulse and start controlling your inner world, your thoughts, your judgments, and your actions. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming unshakable. If you're ready to move from emotional slavery to inner command, stay with me. And as we begin, remind yourself, I respond with reason, not emotion. 1. Reacting is the behavior of the controlled. Most people believe they are in control of their lives, but look closely at how easily they are pulled. A careless comment changes their mood. A delayed reply creates anxiety. A small sign of disrespect ignites anger. And in that instant, something important happens. Their inner authority is surrendered. This is the brutal truth Stoicism forces you to face. The moment you react automatically, you are no longer in control. You may feel justified, you may feel provoked, but none of that changes the fact that your emotional state is now being dictated by something outside you. The Stoics understood this with painful clarity. Epictetus made it clear that events themselves have no power over us. What disturbs us is the judgment we attach to them. That single insight reveals something most people would rather avoid. Whoever can trigger your reactions can control you. Think about how often this happens. If traffic can steal your peace, if a coworker can ruin your focus, if a stranger online can pull you into rage, then your freedom is fragile. A man who reacts without awareness is not choosing his actions. He is being moved. Reaction always follows the same pattern. It is immediate. It is emotional, and it feels justified in the moment. That last part is the most dangerous. Because reaction feels powerful. But in reality, it is leakage. Leakage of focus, leakage of dignity, leakage of authority. You don't lose control all at once. You lose it in small, repeated moments where you allow the external world to dictate your internal state. The Stoic goal was never passivity. It was unshakable command. Marcus Aurelius ruled under constant pressure: war, betrayal, illness, loss. Yet he reminded himself daily that nothing outside his mind could show him how to think or feel. That is not emotional numbness. That is sovereignty. Here is the distinction most people miss. A reaction is external control entering your nervous system. A response is internal authority leaving your character. One is instinctive, the other is deliberate. Modern life is engineered to keep you reacting. Notifications, outrage-driven media, endless comparison. Every alert is a test of self-mastery. And most people fail. Not because they are weak, but because they are untrained. Stoicism begins with training. The first rule is simple, but unforgiving. You cannot control what happens, but you can always control how you judge it. That judgment happens in a fraction of a second, and that fraction is where power lives. When someone disrespects you, the urge is to strike back. When plans fall apart, the urge is panic. When things don't go your way, the urge is complaint. The Stoic does something different. He pauses, not because he is confused, but because he is in command. That pause interrupts the chain between stimulus and emotion. And once the chain is broken, choice appears. Here is a rule you can apply immediately. When you feel triggered, Do nothing for 5 seconds. No reply, no defense, no decision, just 5 seconds. Those 5 seconds are not weakness, they are reclamation. In that space, ask one question: is this within my control? If it is, act with reason. If it isn't, release it without drama. This is how self-mastery begins. Not with grand speeches, not with suppression, but with small, repeated refusals to be pulled. Because every time you choose not to react, you reclaim territory inside yourself. And the man who can pause can choose. The man who can choose cannot be controlled. Remember this: if you can pause, you can decide, and if you can decide, you are free. 2. The pause is where power is born. Between what happens to you and how you respond to it, there is a space. Most people never notice it, and they move straight from stimulus to emotion, from emotion to action, and then wonder why their lives feel chaotic and out of control. Stoicism begins by teaching you to see that space. Because that space is not emptiness. It is freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote that when something external disturbs you, the disturbance is not caused by the thing itself, but by the meaning you assign to it. And the moment you realize this, you gain the power to revoke that meaning. That revocation does not happen in reaction. It happens in the pause. The pause is the moment where instinct is interrupted, where emotion is observed instead of obeyed, where power quietly changes hands. Back to you. Most men fear the pause. They think that if they don't react immediately, they will appear weak. That silence is submission. That speed equals strength. The opposite is true. Immediate reaction is the language of the untrained nervous system. The pause is the mark of a man who governs himself. Think about the moments that usually control you. A disrespectful tone, an unexpected setback, a message that triggers insecurity, a situation that feels unfair. In each of these moments, your body reacts before your mind does. Heart rate increases, muscles tighten, thoughts narrow. This is not failure, this is biology. But Stoicism teaches you not to be ruled by biology alone. Epictetus was clear about this. You may not control the first impression, but you always control whether you assent to it. That assent is the pause. The pause is not passive waiting, it is active restraint. It is the deliberate decision to delay judgment, and delay is powerful because emotion is loud but short-lived. Reason is quiet but durable. When you pause, emotion loses momentum. It begins to soften. It stops demanding immediate obedience. This is why the pause feels uncomfortable. You are denying emotion what it wants most, instant expression. But discomfort is the price of command. Here is the simplest Stoic tool you can practice. When something triggers you, say nothing, even internally, for 5 seconds. Do not label the event. Do not judge it. Do not justify your feelings. Just breathe. Those 5 seconds are not empty time. They are training time. In that window, ask yourself one question. What story am I about to tell myself? Because every reaction is powered by a story. He disrespected me. This shouldn't be happening. They don't value me. I'm being shown up. These stories may feel true, but truth is not the same as usefulness. The Stoic does not ask, is this story emotional? He asks, is this story necessary? Most are not. When you pause, you give yourself the chance to choose a better interpretation, or none at all. And sometimes, the strongest move is not reinterpretation, but non-engagement. Silence, stillness, no immediate move. This is where dominance quietly forms. Not dominance over others, but dominance over yourself. The world respects men who do not rush, who do not flinch, who do not scramble to explain or defend. Because speed reveals dependence, and restraint reveals independence. Over time, the pause becomes automatic. What once felt like effort becomes instinct. What once felt uncomfortable becomes calm. You stop being yanked around by every stimulus. You stop leaking energy and unnecessary reactions. You stop feeding situations that do not deserve you. And something subtle happens. Your presence changes. People feel it, even if they can't explain it. Because the man who can pause cannot be rushed, cannot be baited, cannot be controlled. Remember this: the pause is not hesitation, it is authority choosing its moment. And every time you protect that pause, you reinforce a single truth. I do not belong to my impulses. My impulses answer to me. 3. Control is not emotional suppression. One of the biggest misunderstandings about Stoicism is the belief that control means suppressing emotion, that Stoics feel nothing, that strength equals numbness, that power requires shutting down your inner life. This is false. Stoicism does not ask you to kill your emotions. It teaches you to stop obeying them. There is a critical difference. Suppression is when you pretend you feel nothing. Control is when you feel everything and still choose your action deliberately. The Stoics were clear on this. Epictetus taught that emotions arise naturally, but action is always a choice. You are not responsible for the first sensation, but you are fully responsible for what you do next. Most people collapse these two moments. They feel anger and speak. They feel fear and retreat. They feel envy and compare. Emotion becomes command. The Stoic separates them. Emotion is information, not instruction. Anger tells you a boundary may have been crossed. Fear tells you something feels uncertain. Sadness tells you something mattered. None of these require immediate action. The problem is not emotion. The problem is identification. When you say, "I am angry," you fuse identity with feeling. The Stoic reframes it. I feel anger, but I am not anger. That single shift creates distance, and distance creates choice. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that emotions are visitors, not rulers. They arrive uninvited, and they will leave, if you don't build them a throne. Here is how most people handle emotion. They either explode or they bury it. Both lead to loss of control. Explosion hands power to impulse. Suppression hands power to pressure. Stoic control is neither. It is observation without obedience. When emotion arises, the Stoic does not fight it. He watches it. He names it. Anger, fear, frustration, desire. Naming slows the process. It moves the experience from the nervous system to the thinking mind. And once emotion is seen clearly, it loses its authority. This is why reactive people feel overwhelmed. They are inside the emotion. Stoic men stand beside it. There is a practical framework you can apply immediately. The Stoics lived by it, even if they didn't name it this way. Think of it as STOIC. Stop. Interrupt the automatic response. Take a breath. Slow the body before addressing the mind. Observe. What am I feeling exactly? Interpret. Is my story about this situation accurate or exaggerated? Choose. What action aligns with my values, not my mood? This process takes seconds, but it changes everything, because emotion wants speed and reason wants clarity. When you slow down, clarity wins. Control is not about denying how you feel. It's about refusing to let how you feel decide who you become in that moment. Consider a moment of disrespect. The emotional impulse is to retaliate, to prove something, to reassert status. But the Stoic asks a better question. What action preserves my dignity? Sometimes that action is firm response. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is walking away. The key is that the decision comes from character, not heat. This is why Stoic control feels calm from the outside. Not because nothing is happening inside, but because nothing inside is running the show. Over time, something changes. Emotions still arise, but they rise like waves and pass. They no longer crash through your behavior. You stop regretting things you said too quickly. You stop replaying reactions that weakened your position. You stop handing others control over your inner state, and people notice. Not because you announce your discipline, but because you no longer need to explain yourself. Remember this: feeling is human. Obedience is optional. And the man who understands that distinction does not become cold. He becomes free. 4. The man who controls himself needs to control. One of the clearest signs of inner weakness is the urge to control others, to change their behavior, to force their understanding, to demand their validation. This urge feels justified, but Stoicism exposes it for what it is: a distraction from self-mastery. When a man cannot govern his inner world, he looks outward for leverage. He argues, he explains, he pressures, he manipulates outcomes instead of refining character. The Stoics rejected this entirely. Epictetus was blunt about it. Some things are within your control and some things are not. Confusing the two is the source of most human misery. Other people's thoughts are not yours. Their reactions are not yours. Their approval is not yours. Yet most men spend enormous energy trying to manage exactly those things. They try to be understood. They try to be respected. They try to be seen a certain way. And the more they try, the weaker they appear. Because control-seeking signals dependence. A man who needs others to change is announcing that he has not yet mastered himself. Stoicism flips the equation. Instead of asking, "How do I get them to act differently?" the Stoic asks, "How do I act well regardless?" This shift is not passive, it is powerful. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the only thing truly worth guarding was his own judgment and actions. Not reputation, not outcomes, not other people's behavior, just character. When you stop trying to control others, something important happens. Your energy returns. You are no longer scanning for reactions, no longer adjusting yourself for approval, no longer negotiating your principles for comfort. You become centered, and centered men are difficult to shake. Consider how often conflict escalates because someone tries to force an outcome. A heated argument, a demand for an explanation, a need to win the moment. Each move tightens the knot. The Stoic loosens it, not by surrendering, but by refusing to engage where he has no authority. This is not avoidance, it is precision. The Stoic knows where his power ends, and he does not waste effort beyond that line. Here is a practical rule to live by. Never invest emotional energy in something you cannot command. You cannot command opinions. You cannot command feelings. You cannot command how others interpret your actions. You can command your response. You can command your boundaries. You can command your standards. That is enough. When you stop trying to control others, you also stop needing their validation. This is where quiet confidence forms. You no longer rush to explain yourself. You no longer argue to be understood. You no longer chase respect. You let behavior speak. And behavior is louder than explanation. People feel the difference, not because you assert dominance, but because you are no longer seeking permission to be yourself. This creates a subtle shift in every interaction. Conversations become cleaner. Conflicts lose heat. Manipulative people lose leverage. Why? Because control requires hooks, and a man who governs himself offers very few. This does not mean you tolerate disrespect. It means you respond without desperation. You set boundaries without emotion. You walk away without speeches. You choose silence when words would weaken your position. This is Stoic strength, not rigidity, not arrogance, but self-sufficiency. Over time, the urge to control others fades. Not because you gave up, but because you outgrew it. You realize something essential. The more you master yourself, the less the world can move you. And the man who cannot be moved does not need to move anyone else. Remember this: control what is yours. Release what is not, and your presence will do the rest. 5. Disciplined silence is stronger than any reaction. Most people speak too quickly. They rush to explain, they rush to defend, they rush to respond, especially when they feel misunderstood or disrespected. They believe silence is weakness. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is strength. Not passive silence, not fearful silence, but disciplined silence, the kind that comes from control, not avoidance. A reactive man feels compelled to respond. A disciplined man decides if a response is necessary at all. Marcus Aurelius warned himself not to waste life arguing about what a good man should be, but to simply be one. That same principle applies here. You do not need to announce your strength. You do not need to justify your boundaries. You do not need to explain your silence. Silence becomes powerful when it is intentional, because reaction feeds situations that should starve. Think about how conflict escalates. Someone provokes. You respond emotionally. They respond again. The cycle tightens. Every reaction adds fuel. Disciplined silence removes oxygen. This is why manipulative people hate silence. It gives them nothing to work with. No emotional spike. No defensive explanation. No proof that they've gotten under your skin. Silence exposes intention. When you stop reacting, patterns emerge. Who respects your boundaries? Who pushes harder? Who disappears when they can no longer provoke? The Stoic watches these patterns carefully. Words can lie. Behavior cannot. Here is a difficult truth. You do not owe everyone access to your thoughts, and you certainly do not owe reactions to those who seek to control you through emotion. Silence is not withdrawal. It is selectivity. You choose when engagement serves your values and when it weakens them. Seneca observed that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Much of that suffering comes from conversations we didn't need to have, arguments we didn't need to enter. Disciplined silence prevents unnecessary damage, not only to your position, but to your inner state. Consider how often people regret what they said in the heat of the moment. Words spoken in reaction are difficult to retrieve, but words withheld preserve optionality. Silence keeps doors open or closed by choice. This is especially important in moments of disrespect. The instinct is to correct, to confront, to reassert status immediately. But the Stoic asks a different question. Will speaking now increase my authority or reduce it? Often, silence answers that question for you. Silence communicates confidence without confrontation. It signals that you are not desperate to be understood, that you are not dependent on immediate validation. Over time, disciplined silence reshapes how others treat you, not because you intimidate, but because you are no longer predictable. Predictability is what makes people controllable. When you always react, people learn your triggers. When you remain silent, they lose leverage. This does not mean you never speak. It means when you do speak, your words carry weight because they are rare, because they are measured, because they are not emotional debris. The Stoic speaks with purpose, or not at all. Here is a rule worth remembering. If a response is driven by emotion, delay it. If it is driven by principle, deliver it calmly. Silence is not the absence of power. It is power resting in reserve. And reserve is intimidating because it signals choice. The man who can remain silent cannot be rushed, cannot be baited, cannot be controlled. Remember this: you don't win by reacting louder. You win by reacting less. And disciplined silence is one of the clearest signs that you are no longer ruled by impulse, but guided by command. 6. When you control your reactions, your life changes. Direction. Most people think life changes through big decisions, a new job, a new relationship, a dramatic turning point. Stoicism reveals a quieter truth. Life changes through small moments of control, repeated daily. Every reaction is a vote. Every pause is a correction. Over time, those corrections alter your trajectory. Consider how many lives are shaped by uncontrolled reactions. A moment of anger ruins a relationship. A defensive response damages a reputation. An impulsive decision closes a door that never reopens. None of these were planned. They were reactions. The Stoic understands that destiny is often decided in seconds most people don't notice. Marcus Aurelius warned that the quality of your thoughts determines the quality of your life. Reactions reveal thoughts that were never examined. When you begin controlling your reactions, you begin editing your future. This does not happen overnight. At first, control feels unnatural. You pause when you used to speak. You breathe when you used to react. You walk away when you used to argue. It feels like restraint, but restraint compounds. Over weeks, something shifts. You start noticing fewer conflicts, less regret, more clarity. People stop pulling you into unnecessary drama because you no longer feed it. Opportunities begin to appear, not because you chased them, but because your steadiness made room for them. This is not mysticism, it is cause and effect. When you stop reacting emotionally, you stop creating emotional consequences. Epictetus reminded his students that freedom is not found in controlling circumstances, but in mastering the use you make of them. Controlled reactions produce controlled outcomes. Uncontrolled reactions produce chaos. Think about the areas of life that matter most. Career, reputation, relationships, self-respect. Each one is shaped by how you respond under pressure. People trust the man who remains composed. They promote the man who does not panic. They respect the man who does not explode. Not because he is agreeable, but because he is reliable. Reliability is rare, and rarity creates value. When you control your reactions, you stop living at the mercy of circumstances. Bad days remain bad days, but they no longer define you. Provocation still exists, but it no longer commands you. Setbacks still arrive, but they do not knock you off course. This is where identity changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries to stay calm. You become someone who expects himself to act with reason. That expectation becomes standard. And standards create consistency. Consistency builds character. Character shapes destiny. This is why Stoics placed such emphasis on daily practice. Not because discipline is impressive, but because it is directional. Every controlled reaction nudges your life toward stability. Every paused impulse strengthens your authority. Every deliberate choice reinforces who you are becoming. Over time, the man you once were becomes incompatible with your current behavior. Old patterns fall away. Old triggers lose power. Old versions of you no longer fit. This is real change. Quiet, uncelebrated, irreversible. And the greatest benefit is this: you stop fearing situations. Because you trust yourself inside them, you know that whatever happens, you will not betray your own standards. That trust creates calm, and calm is power. Remember this: you don't control life by forcing outcomes. You control life by governing yourself. And when self-governance becomes habit, your direction becomes clear. Not because the path is easy, but because you no longer wander. Self-control is the ultimate power. If there is one truth Stoicism leaves you with, it is this: you are never meant to control the world. You are meant to govern yourself within it. Today, You learned what most people never stop to examine: that reacting is surrender, that the pause is power, that control is not suppression, but choice, that silence can be stronger than confrontation, and that every disciplined reaction quietly reshapes your life's direction. This is not philosophy for comfort, it is philosophy for command. The Stoic does not ask life to be easier, he trains himself to be stronger. When you stop reacting, you stop bleeding energy into things that don't deserve it. When you start controlling, you reclaim authority over your thoughts, your actions, and your future. This is how calm men are forged. Not in isolation, but in pressure. So as you leave this video, remember one rule: nothing outside you has power unless you give it permission. Choose your pauses. Guard your judgments. Let your actions come from principle, not impulse. And if this message resonated with you, write this in the comments. Not for others, but for yourself. I control myself. If you're walking this path, subscribe and stay with us. Because self-mastery is not a moment, it is a practice. And practice daily, it makes you unshakable.